So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in my big opinion, as we mark Armistice Day, there are dark, illiberal forces that threaten our values and our way of life, both here and abroad. The fight for freedom has never been more important. My Mark Meets guest is the original WAG, model and TV personality and former Miss Great Britain, Danielle Lloyd. In the big question, with a poor performance from his preferred candidates in the US midterm elections, is it game over for Donald Trump? Is his political career now behind him? Plus my all-star panel and tomorrow's papers. I'll see you after the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Mark. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Residents in Ukraine have been celebrating in the key city of Kherson after Putin's soldiers were ordered to retreat. It was a city that was right on the front line since the invasion began back in February. Crowds cheered and chanted glory to the Ukrainian armed forces as President Zelensky called it an historic day. It comes after a main bridge over the Dnipro River on the west of the city was destroyed before Russian forces moved out. UK authorities and coastguards are preparing for a significant surge in small boats crossing the English Channel this weekend. Bad weather has stopped migrants from illegally reaching the coast for almost a fortnight. But GB News understands, with the weather expected to improve, crime groups from Albania are planning a mass launch of small boats from French beaches tomorrow. It would be the first large-scale arrival since the end of last month, when just over 14,000 people arrived in 32 small boats. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is warning there's a tough road ahead after new data shows the UK economy shrank between July and September. It contracted by 0.2% during the 3 months as the cost of living crisis deepened. Hunt says difficult decisions will be needed to restore confidence and economic stability, but that the British economy remains resilient. Last week, the Bank of England forecast a 2-year recession, which would be the longest on record. US President Joe Biden says the war in Ukraine has made it more urgent than ever to double down on climate commitments. Speaking at the COP27 climate summit in Egypt, Biden says he's treating the climate crisis with urgency, adding the US will meet emission reduction targets by 2030. He's called on all countries to act faster on climate change.
Climate crisis is about human security, economic security, environmental security, national security, and the very life of the planet. The United States of America will meet our emissions targets by 2030.
The UK marked Armistice Day with a 2-minute silence this morning. Bells rang out across the country, including the recently restored Big Ben in London, ahead of the 2-minute silence to remember the war dead. A service was held at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire to pay tribute to all those who've served their country. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Thanks, Tatiana. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight in The Big Question. Following a poor performance from his preferred candidates in the US midterm elections, is it game over for Donald Trump? Is his political career now behind him? We'll speak to 2 top Republicans who will debate about the future of the orange one. My Mark Meets guest is the original WAG, model, TV personality and former Miss Great Britain Danielle Lloyd. And in the news agenda with my panel, after comedian David Walliams calls a contestant on Britain's Got Talent the C-bomb and allegedly makes sexual remarks about another candidate, is it wrong to cancel celebrities for comments made in private conversations? Also, with record repossessions, should people get help with their mortgage repayments on their homes? And is a school right to charge a pupil 20p for breaking a pencil in the classroom? Reacting to those stories and many more are my brilliant panel tonight of top broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee, former Lib Dem MP and now filmmaker and TV personality Lembit Opik, and Fleet Street radio and TV legend Mike Porky Parry. Now I want to hear from you throughout the show, Mark at gbnews.uk, and this programme has a golden rule. What is that rule? We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Now, I'm delighted to say that this channel and this programme is growing an army of fans, and I'm normally beating Sky about now. But I'm pleased to say that last night I did a comedy set at a big venue in Essex, and I bumped into a fabulous lady called Julia. Here's Julia with her lovely family, and she watches the programme every time it's on, which is very kind. She also told me that she's a Remainer, but loves GB News because we are a very broad church. So thanks to Julia and all of the other lovely people that constantly come up to me to talk about the show. We are nothing without you, and I want to thank you for your support. If you're enjoying the channel and if you're enjoying the programme, tell your friends, tell your family, and let's change the world together. It's time now for this. Today is a national opportunity to remember the service and sacrifice of all of those who have defended our freedoms and protected our way of life. We remember the armed forces and their families from Britain and the Commonwealth. We remember the vital role played by the emergency services and those that have lost their lives as a result of conflict. We will never begin to process the horrors that befell the courageous men and women that fought for this country, that fought for the world. And the many heroes in service at home and abroad who continue to do so. Courage, valour, sacrifice, no words are enough to sum up what they have given and still give. This is the annual moment when we reflect on the values that we hold so dear and for which such a high price was paid in the past. However, I cannot, in all conscience, with this platform, not speak out when those values are eroded. Nothing compares to the horror of what happened in both the First and Second World Wars and in other campaigns abroad over the last 100 years. But everybody that has served did so with a picture in their mind of what they were fighting for. They were fighting for freedom, for democracy, for decency, for humanity. If we don't govern by and live by those values, it was all for nothing. The botched Allied departure from Afghanistan last year is an example of the West rowing back on those values and rowing back on the promise of peace. Closer to home, the tearing down of our statues, the rewriting of our history, the cancellation of our culture, books, comedy, music and art, and the policing of our words and thoughts are an attack on those values for which so many fought. And apparently even Winston Churchill, the man who defeated history's worst monster, Hitler, is now a bad person, someone of whom we should be ashamed, not proud. It's my view that to demonise, not thank this man is a profound sin, but it shows how far we have lost our way. In both wars, we saw off tyrannical states, but have witnessed in the West state tyranny on its own people through vaccine and mask mandates and the medieval policy of lockdowns. I'd love to know what those who fought in 2 world wars would think about some aspects of our current society, and what those in the fields of the Somme battling trench foot and dodging bullets from the Hun would make of COVID hysteria. Pathetic. Britain is still great, thanks to those brave men and women. But I'm not sure whether this torn, divided and in some quarters self-hating country would be one they recognise. Dark, illiberal forces are at play to destroy everything that makes Britain great. Those who fell, who sacrificed everything and who we remember today have left us a legacy. They gave us a gift. The only way that we can repay them is to preserve that gift, to nurture it and to hand it over intact to future generations. The fight for freedom has never been more important, and now it's our turn. What are your thoughts on Remembrance Day? Mark at gbnews.uk, reacting to my big opinion monologue and all of the big stories of the day on my stellar panel tonight. I've said they're extra special. They don't believe me, but they are. Fleet Street and radio legend Mike Porky Parry, top broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee, and former Lib Dem MP, filmmaker and TV personality Lembit Opik. Lembit, let me start with you. Your thoughts on Remembrance Day?
Well, first of all, they gave their lives so we basically didn't have to. And there's no undramatic way to recognise that. The stoicism with which, particularly in World War I, so many people died to protect the very values that you discussed, makes me realise how grateful I am that I haven't had to live through a war. I haven't had to serve in a war. I lived in the Troubles in Northern Ireland, but that's still a world apart from seeing your friends die next to you. The big thing that you've said, though, is those values. I actually went into politics because I'm an intense libertarian, and that's not always easy. It's certainly not popular now. In order to be a real supporter of freedom, you have to let people do things that you don't like, that are offensive, that are unpopular, as long as they don't materially damage third parties. And I think you're right. In our woke culture now, we've sort of lost that central essence of what it means to live in a free society. And I'm certainly trying to fight to return that. But then sometimes I get excluded for demanding free speech for third parties. And isn't that ironic?
Isn't it ironic indeed, Lembit? Linda, what's your view on this?
Well, I'm a very, very big supporter of Remembrance Day. I stood in my office in silence today with a couple of colleagues, and I always make sure that I pay attention to the ceremony on Sunday. I'll be in Marlow in the town by the cenotaph for the same service. I take these things very seriously. I went to a good old-fashioned British grammar school, and one of the first things I noticed about it was the boards in the lobby with the names of the sixth formers, the sixth form boys who died in wars. And also I remember my mother's partner who won the Légion d'honneur for his part in the D-Day landings. He was just 17 when he helped build the smokescreen to get our troops ashore.
Do you think, Linda, that we take freedom for granted in 2022?
Absolutely. And it's not surprising because we are much further away from those great conflicts. I think that's the reason why we should remember them, because we in this country are fortunate enough to live in a free society. I work for part of the week with the Afghans. I'm the Women's Empowerment Director of the Afghan Association, and we know what is going on there, where people do not have any freedoms at all, apart from the Taliban. And you can look at Ukraine. Look what's happening there. It's happening all over the world. We've got to try and remember that freedom is something that has to be nurtured and valued and watered and cared for. Otherwise, we lose it, and it would be a terrible price.
Mike Porky Parry, you've always acknowledged the importance of this day, both as a journalist and as a man that appreciates and enjoys the freedom that we're privileged to have.
Well, my father was 17 when he was taken out of the Birkenhead Institute School in 1940 and drafted into the Royal Navy, OK? And in 1944, he was on the D-Day landings, and he was only 23 at the time, by the time the war ended, and he was demobbed in 1946. My father died very young. He was 58 when he died. And one of the reasons he died young was he picked up mental illness from the experiences he'd suffered during the war, seeing colleagues on board ships in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean having their heads cut off by missiles and attacks from German submarines. It undoubtedly played on his mind for the rest of his life, and in the end, at 58, with mental turmoil, he died. If he was alive today, I'd be saying, Dad, what do you think of all these people coming across the channel in these dinghies? Because you fought for so long on that very channel, you crossed it to keep this country safe and secure so we could choose who came here, when they came here, and what we could do for them when they got here. When I see these people on gantries on the M25, again, I always think, what would my dad think? He fought to keep this country free, and do you know what? We're too free now. This country is too free. The reason why these people do these things in this country and glue themselves to roads and try and desecrate art in the art galleries of this country is because they know they're not going to be punished for doing it. I'll say to them again, if you're that brave and that bold, go to China. Go to China, who have put out more emissions in the last 40 years than the British Empire ever did, ever since the middle of the 18th century. Yeah. Go to China and stick yourself on a road there and see what the Chinese people would do to you when you protest against oil being taken out of the ground.
Too right. Look, Lembit, we asked our viewers whether Britain and the British people now take freedom for granted. Here are the results of the poll. Almost 88% say yes, we now take freedom for granted. 12% say no. That's a damning statistic, isn't it, Lembit?
It is, if it means that we don't defend freedom. I'm very interested to hear what my colleagues here on the panel say today. Some people might wonder why I'm called Lembitopic. My parents came out as refugees in World War II because the alternative was to stay in the Soviet Union and die. And they didn't all get out, and many of them died. I guess that's one reason I got so motivated about politics. And as Mike said, there's something gone wrong. We are now allowing people to silence our liberty in the name of these causes. They cost millions of person hours when they glue themselves to the roads. And as you know, I think that their campaign is rubbish anyway. They don't understand the science. But somehow we tolerate that. And then when the public get angry and try to take steps that the police don't take, they're the ones who get arrested. I'm not sure quite what the solution is, But perhaps what Linda and Mike have inferred is right. We should now take a more robust position for those who disrespect the freedoms that they got, and they abuse them, because with freedom comes responsibility. And crying your eyes out in a gantry with an emotional and actually quite a profane outburst doesn't really impress me, and that's not what freedom's about.
However, Lembit, just to pick you up on that, many would argue that those Just Stop Oil people are exercising the freedoms for which so many gave their lives. This is democracy in action.
Up to a point, but it's asymmetric, because how many times have I challenged them to come here onto your show and to explain the science? What do they say in return? Oh, Lembit Opik should be cancelled. He shouldn't be allowed a platform to challenge this zeitgeist. Now, that's why it's asymmetric, because, just using this one example, the environmental alarmists don't really want you to hear the other side. In a truly free society, everyone gets a voice. It's done with respect, and then the public make the decision.
Well, I agree with you, Lembit. I think it's like vaccine mandates, mask mandates, lockdowns. If the argument is strong enough, it can withstand debate and scrutiny.
Absolutely.
Perhaps lockdowns were a bit wobbly in terms of their logic, which is why so many were defensive about their rollout. Linda, in my Big Opinion monologue, I've pointed out that in many quarters, Winston Churchill is now a bad man. This is the guy that defeated Hitler, but we're supposed to be ashamed of him, not proud of him, which I think, Linda, demonstrates how lost we are.
I think it does, because, I mean, he was maybe not the greatest Briton, but he was a man of immense importance to this country and immense importance to our freedoms. He was the person in the driving seat, and he was the person that had to make the truly, truly difficult decisions in the Second World War. I always remember listening to an interview on the radio with his daughter, who said that one of the most touching moments was in the funeral, when his body, his coffin, was placed on the barge to go down to be buried at his home, and the very, very big industrial cranes nodded their heads towards the river. And I just thought that was a measure of tremendous respect, and that we should just respect Winston Churchill for being the man he was, that fought the Nazis and brought us through successfully through the Second World War. I mean, that wasn't a war that we were going to win to start with. It was tremendously difficult to get into a position that would give us victory. And I'm astonished, actually, that people would be in any way besmirching his memory. It's no good for those people to look back and start rewriting and recharacterising who he was and what he did. I mean, what have they done?
Yeah, briefly, Porky, Winston Churchill, we know that he came from a different era. He didn't and said some bad things, but for me, it's all cancelled out by the fact that he cancelled Hitler, one of history's worst monsters.
Well, absolutely. He might have done one or two bad things, hasn't any world leader over time, but he did some very, very good things, like you say, wiped out Hitler. Have you ever seen the film The Darkest Hour? It's the fantastic... We had no chance. The Americans wouldn't lend us any money. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any troops. We didn't have any aeroplanes. And yet somehow Churchill turned it all round and did it. And the current argument this week has been, how bad is the British Empire over the centuries? No, I go the other way. The British Empire made a greater contribution to the well-being of the world than anything it did to take from the world. And I'll believe that till my dying day.
Do you agree? Do you disagree? This is a broad church, Mark Dolan, tonight. We welcome all opinions, good, bad and indifferent. Mark at gbnews.uk. Now, let me tell you that last Saturday, Mike, Porky Parry and myself made television history. That's right, because we saw the birth of Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In, a brand new show every Saturday, including tomorrow night, from 8 till 11, that's right. It's an hour earlier, and we have the People's Hour. So if you want to be a star on the programme and take part in video calls on the show, drop me an email right now, mark at gbnews.uk. Just label your email The People's Hour, and we'll get you on the programme. Up next in the news agenda, David Walliams, the comedian, has called a contestant the C-bomb on Britain's Got Talent. But is it wrong to cancel public figures for conversations they have in private? My Mark Meets guest is the one and only WAG, reality star and model, and former Miss Great Britain, Danielle Lloyd. But next, in the big question, is it game over for Donald Trump? We'll head straight to the States and find out. See you in 3.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
A big reaction to my big opinion monologue on Armistice Day. Do we take our freedoms for granted? Well, in the text poll, 80% of you over have said that we do. This from Ricky. Mark, I don't take freedom for granted. As we've seen in the last 3 years, our freedoms can be taken away with the stroke of a pen by a handful of people who shouldn't dictate where I can or cannot go. Thank you for that, Ricky. Mark, your monologue was spot on, says Anonymous, but we need to stop them building the digital prison to contain us in as well. I do agree with you. The rise of technology is a massive concern for our civil liberties, particularly a cashless society and ID cards. No, no, no. Tracy says, Mark, history is history. We cannot do anything about years gone by. But as a 50-year-old, we learnt by our parents and grandparents. But this new 20-year-old that's coming up seems to want either to persecute us for things we did not do, or Sir Winston Churchill in the 1940s. We've gone too far. There is freedom, but no common sense. Thank you very much for that. Bridget, Mark, I love your show, and it's wonderful hearing some truth about coronavirus, lockdown and the dreaded masks. Masks cause respiratory problems. Lockdown was a disgrace. Thank you very much for that, Bridget. And last but not least, Alan, who says, excellent monologue as an aged ex-serviceman who did active service. I find it sickening to witness what this country is becoming. Powerful words from Alan. And Alan, may I salute you for your service to this country. Lots to get through. After 10, I'll be discussing a biological man that's won a female beauty pageant in America. I'll be dealing with that in my Take at 10. Plus, my Mark Meets guest is the reality star Danielle Lloyd. But first, this. It's time now for The Big Question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, following a poor performance from his preferred candidates in the US midterm elections, is it game over for Donald Trump? Is his political career now behind him? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome attorney and former acting defense secretary under Donald Trump, Kash Patel, former White House Chief of Staff under Mr. Trump, Mick Mulvaney, and former Republican congressional candidate for Utah, Jake Hunsaker. Jake, let me start with you. Do you think that it's over for Trump now?
I absolutely do. And it comes down to a couple of things. First of all, I have to call out that today on Veterans Day in the United States, as a Republican, I want from leaders, specifically former presidents in a position of trust, public trust, and duty to our country, to acknowledge the service of men and women who have given their lives for our country throughout the years. And right now, what I see is someone who's dabbling in petty politics today as every day. He was creating nicknames for Governor Youngkin in Virginia simply to defend the lack of a winning track record. And to me, that pettiness is symbolic of where Trump is in his own head and certainly in the mind of, I think, most Americans right now. There's no leadership there. And I'll say, secondly, in terms of, does he have a place in the Republican Party long term? As a leader, I would say no, because I want a leader who wins on conservative principles. I want a leader who wins in election cycles and a leader who will get Republicans back into the majority consistently on issues and on policies that matter to Americans. I went to Trump rallies in 2016 when he was campaigning here in Utah. He said, we're going to win so much, we're going to get sick of winning all day long. We won for a minute when we had control of both the Senate and the House in 2017. The tax code, maybe some trade policies. But since then, it's been downhill. In 2018, we lost the House. In 2020, we lost the Senate and the House. We lost the runoff in Georgia, right? Now in 2022, we see that we may not have the red wave that we ultimately need in order to progress these policies. I don't see the winning coming from a Trump post-presidential figure, and certainly not as the head of our party in the future.
Mick Mulvaney, former White House Chief of Staff under Donald Trump. Are we seeing the tail end of a political career for Mr. Trump in the way that we've seen in the UK for Boris Johnson?
No, and by the way, I don't think it's over for Boris Johnson either. Both of these gentlemen have a history of coming back. Jay's, I don't know Jay, but he's right about a couple of things. The nicknames that Trump is throwing out today are designed to sort of distract from what happened on Tuesday. Trump is a master of changing the news narrative, the news cycle, changing the national discussion. And if he's not able to do it by those nicknames, you could expect more in the next couple of days. Jay's also right that we haven't had very much winning since 2018. I was hoping to have more winning. I was hoping to be sick of winning by now. We don't have it. But none of that equals a conclusion that Donald Trump is finished. Everybody thought Donald Trump was done in 2016 when the Access Hollywood tape came out. For those of you viewers who aren't familiar with that, that's when he said he was going to grab women by the private parts. People thought his career was over after January 6th. It just wasn't. The man is down, but he's not out. There's no question that he's still got some life in him. Is it a done deal that he's going to win in 2024? No. But to say that he is out and because of what happened last week is to not understand Donald Trump or the American political system right now.
However, Mr. Mulvaney, you're speaking to us, I understand, from Florida, where there is now emerging a strong alternative to Donald Trump in Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's had a landslide victory. Of course, back in the day, Florida was a marginal state, but now it's strongly red. And he is clearly more coherent, more organised, more disciplined, and less divisive than Donald Trump. He's the real threat, isn't he?
Well, he's one of them. I've talked to a lot of my former colleagues. I was in Congress for 6 years. I've talked to them over the course of the last 48 hours. And the ones out in the nation broadly are complaining to me privately about what a drag Trump was on their race, how hard it was to win re-election with Trump sort of at the head of the party. But the folks from here in Florida were singing Ron DeSantis' praises, how wonderful it was to be on a ticket with him at the top. Those are private conversations right now, Mark, until those become public. Right now, people who are attacking Trump are people who are going to attack Trump anyway. It's the establishment wing of the party. It's the Bushes and the Romneys and the Wall Street Journals. When it becomes the middle part of the party, when it becomes the rank and file members and rank and file voters, then you'll know things have changed. You've not seen that yet.
Kash Patel, lovely to have you on the programme as well. Former acting defence secretary under Donald Trump. You know the man intimately well. Does he look beat to you?
It's great to be with you on Veterans Day and Armistice Day on your side of the pond. Thanks for having me, and let's honour those that have fallen before us and served today. On this day, especially having served in national security roles, having served with Chief of Staff Mulvaney in the White House, I echo some of his statements. I've never seen this man defeated or anything close to that. You know, we still talk often. He is in extremely good spirits. And I'd like to just put a couple of things in perspective when they say, quote unquote, this red tsunami or wave or whatever verbiage you want to talk about didn't happen. We just retired Nancy Pelosi from as Speaker of the House. That is a monumental achievement in modern day American politics when they had the landscape in the political atmosphere poised against us. And if we win where I am in Nevada, which it looks like Adam Laxalt will do, and we win a Herschel Walker runoff, that's the Senate. Most of these candidates or most of these politicos like Paul Ryan, who is a former Speaker of the House, where he lost the Republican majority, where he lost the presidential candidate, and where he lost and suffocated Russiagate investigations that I led. These are the guys that are out there saying that Trump's over. We wouldn't be talking about 230 or 235. We'd be talking about 220 in the House, maybe 210, and probably 44, 45. So, yes, there's some bad side to some of the negativity around Donald Trump, but most of these candidates were able to win across the country because they had him and were echoing America First policies that he has adjudicated across his entire career. So I have to agree that he's definitely not, he wasn't out during Russiagate. He wasn't out during Jan 6, impeachment 1, impeachment 2. And if you think he's out now, I guess that's what they want you to think, and he'll probably just come back.
Kash Patel, many Republican supporters will have watched Ron DeSantis' impressive performance in these midterms and think, I want a piece of that for 2024.
Yeah, look, there's no question that there was a sweeping victories in Florida, and good for it. Good for Republicans for making that state hard red. But the fact remains that in the last presidential cycle, Donald Trump received 1 million more votes than Ron DeSantis just got this past week. That's a fact that you can't overcome or ignore. That's not a fact that people are talking about, but it's not one that's out there in the mainstream media. So to say that he has no weight left in places like Florida or it's diminishing, I think the ground level politics disagree. I do think Ron, there's nothing taken away from his victory. It was monumental, and same with Senator Rubio's. It was astounding to see Miami-Dade, my former home, flip as hard as they did. But those are years upon years in the making, and I just don't see that Donald Trump had no impact on that dynamic.
Jake, I'll come back to you in just a moment, but Mick Mulvaney, with the greatest respect, many people watching this will take the view that you're drinking the Trump Kool-Aid, which I would imagine is orange in colour. And the bottom line is that, yes, he's been a winner in the past, a deeply charismatic man, a very entertaining public speaker who's excellent at firing up the base. But this is a man who, notwithstanding his many gifts, is far too divisive and toxic to win in 2024. It's time to move on, Mick.
Yeah, I always laugh when people say I'm either too pro-Trump or too anti-Trump. Apparently, I've upset both folks on the left and the right by trying to call things as I see them. Look, Trump is not down. He's not out. But I've said several times, and I'll say it again with Cash listening, he may be the worst Republican candidate that we have in 2024 because the race would be about him. He lost in 2020 because he was not able to make it him versus Joe Biden. It became a referendum on him. Okay, he won that race in 2016, lost it in 2020. If he's our nominee in 2024, he could lose. I don't think Ron DeSantis can lose. I don't think many of the other younger generation of Republicans could lose, at least if the environment stays the same way. So look, I'm not picking sides. I'm not drinking Kool-Aid. I'm telling you, he had a rough day on Tuesday. But if you ask me if he's down and out, the question is no, because the man is probably the best natural politician of my lifetime, and that includes Bill Clinton. So look, we're 2 years away. A lot can happen. It's been a rough week for the former president. There's no question about that. I think, yeah, he endorsed like 300 people and 290 of them won. But the 10 that lost were critical. We lost critical governor's races and critical Senate races. And Trump has to recognize the fact that he at least played some part in that. So look, my point is this. We are far from being over. He's not dead, and he's not the lock that he was two weeks ago. If we had a red wave, everybody would be running for the doors because Donald Trump would be the presumptive nominee, and we're just not there. We're in a gray area right now, and we'll be for a couple of weeks at the very, very least.
Jake Hunsaker, underestimate this man at your peril. That's what history teaches us about Donald J. Trump.
Well, listen, I think those are all good points. Mick and Cash obviously have been on the front lines of a lot of this, but I have to say that, painting Donald Trump as some sort of miraculous comeback kid that never, stays down is a little bit inflated in terms of how we view his political prowess. He came from a very fractured field in 2016 that split a lot of that other primary vote, right? And even in the general, he was running against probably the most flawed presidential Democratic nominee we've seen in recent history. And so those are huge factors. You cannot negate or underplay the importance of, the context there politically in terms of his wins. And I'll say here, even in 2022, the wins that Donald Trump is taking credit for are personality wins, but they're not policy wins, right? This is a game that Donald Trump knows how to play. The only political game he knows how to play is a Trump game. He's not playing a philosophical game. He's not playing a policy game. He's playing a Donald Trump game. And that's why, you see him making it all about him. Even in the hours prior to polls closing on Tuesday, he was saying any losses have nothing to do with me. All the wins have everything to do with me, right? Taking credit today for Youngkin's win. This is about Donald Trump, and we see that that's not playing out. Even, in the hours ahead of Election Day, Cash was on with Bannon saying, if everyone campaigned like Kari Lake down in Arizona, we could call the election right now. Guess what? We couldn't call it right now because Kari Lake ran on one thing, Trump. She didn't run on policy. She ran on Trump, and that's a failing strategy, not only for candidates, but also for the Republican Party long term. The comeback kid narrative, I don't buy it. I think he's gotten some very good political tailwinds in the last couple of years. I don't see his relevance remaining in the Republican Party.
Kash Patel, last word to you. Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage to the Republican Party if he continues to play dirty by, for example, calling Ron DeSantis Ron DeSanctimonious. In the end, Trump stays in the race, potentially hands the Democrats the White House in 2 years' time as a result.
Yeah, I guess I have to disagree with you. And, harkening back to the Arizona state of play where I'm at, the border state in Nevada, the reason we haven't called the race for Kari Lake is because there's 350,000 votes that the Arizona Democratic establishment has not counted because they put in a system where they didn't have enough employees and enough ink literally on Election Day. So these are fixes. These are simple everyday fixes that we can have that I think Donald Trump is talking about. And again, you can say he's out and you can say he's divisive. It's not. How is it a Republican state when they just had a Democratic state secretary of state who handles elections? You know that. It's not the senators that take it or the governor. The state secretary of state is in charge of the electorate. You know that. And am I wrong that
it's a Republican House, a Republican Senate, a Republican governor's office? So it's not California, Cash. You know that. Listen, there could be a lot of stuff going on, but it's not a Democrat-controlled machine. Ducey is as good a Republican as you're going to find. The House is Republican, the Senate is Republican, the governor's Republican. It's just a fact. It just is. Doesn't mean there's not shenanigans.
Senators are both
Democrats. It's a fact.
In that case, Mick Mulvaney, can you give me your percentage chance that Donald Trump wins the nomination to run for president in 2024? What's the percentage chance in your view?
Oh, if Donald Trump runs as a Republican in a primary, his chances of winning are 95%. There is no, he could lose in a heads-up race against a couple of different people, Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, but it won't be a heads-up race. It'll be him against 5 or 6 or 10 other people, and he'll win the Republican primary. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about winning national elections. As I told the president when I was in the White House, we lost some high-profile special elections when I was in the office. I'm like, look, if we win a primary and lose the general, we're still losers. The goal here is to win races at the end, and that's still going to be the goal. So the question is not whether or not Donald Trump can be the Republican nominee. He absolutely can and likely would be. The question is, can he win that race in 2024? The answer is yes, maybe, but it could also be no. He is not a lock that he might have been, for example, if we'd had this successful red wave on Tuesday night, and we didn't.
OK, it seems to be that you think he most likely will run. How about you? What do you think about this? For example, if I could ask, either of you gentlemen, do you think that, in fact, Donald Trump will run next week?
I think he does. I think he runs, and it's because he can't get out of his own way. And so it will come at the detriment of conservative policy and conservative wins long term, unless Biden continues breaking the country at the rate that he's breaking the country. Then maybe we have a general election win in 2024, regardless of the nominee. But again, that won't be a Trump win. That will be a Biden loss or a Democrat loss because of the Democrat policies in play there. I think he doesn't get out of his own way, and so we'll have to deal with the political realities once he declares.
All right, so you think it's happening. And Kash Patel, finally with you, do you think that Trump will announce his candidacy perhaps as soon as next week?
I mean, as of right now, I'm heading to Palm Beach on Monday, so I think he's going to announce it on Tuesday.
That's a good sign.
A brilliant debate. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We watch what's happening on the other side of the pond with great interest. My thanks to former Acting Defence Secretary under Donald Trump, Kash Patel, former White House Chief of Staff under Mr. Trump, Mick Mulvaney, and former Republican congressional candidate for Utah, Jake Hunsaker. Gentlemen, thank you. What's your view? Would you like to see Donald Trump back in the White House? Mark at gbnews.uk. Now, coming up, my Mark Meets guest is model and television star Danielle Lloyd. We've got the papers at 10:30 with full panel reaction. But next, comedian David Walliams used the C-bomb when talking about a contestant on Britain's Got Talent. And he made sexual remarks as well. But is it wrong to cancel celebrities for what they say in private conversations? We'll discuss that next.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory. twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Well, this show just got bigger. That's right. Every Saturday night, we've got Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In. It's a 3-hour extravaganza. So Friday and Sunday, 9 till 11. Saturday, we start at 8, an hour early for the People's Hour. We'll be taking your video calls for the first hour of the programme every Saturday, including tomorrow night. And lots of people have been emailing in. They want to be on the show. Fergus, Michaela, Steve, Jim and Ahmed are all on the list, and many more are welcome. Mark at gbnews.uk if you want to be part of the People's Hour every Saturday night at 8 o'clock. Big response on email to our debate with regards to Donald Trump. Susan says, Mark, if the USA doesn't want Donald Trump, we could use him here. We need a leader. How about that? Donald Trump gets a safe Tory seat and becomes our next Prime Minister. Well, we are due another Prime Minister, aren't we? It's been 2 weeks. Also, a big reaction to my big opinion monologue. They're coming in thick and fast. Do we appreciate the freedom for which so many gave their lives? Well, Marlena has emailed and said, fantastic monologue as ever. She quotes the words from a plaque at Auschwitz. And she said that this particular quote should be in every school. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Also, just catching up on a couple of other emails in relation to this. Mark, I agree with your panel, and like them, I always think about what my World War II serving father would think about the now UK and the cancelling of our history, the cancelling of our freedoms, and, in essence, everything he fought for. The police who will not enforce the law with these imbecilic Just Stop Oil protesters should be prosecuted. Nobody can choose which laws to obey, particularly the law enforcers. And so on. Love your programme, says Anne. Thank you for those kind words. And last but not least for now, Rhonda says, Mark, loving the show. I think a debate should be had on bringing back national service. As soon as you turn out of school, you should be made to join the armed forces and taught discipline, respect and love for our country. And maybe this would educate the youth of today. Rhonda, thank you for that excellent email. And that's something that we'll be debating on a future show, because I think that's a cracking talking point. Look, lots more to get through with my fantastic panel. David Walliams, the comedian, has been forced to apologise after he was accused of making derogatory and sexually explicit comments about contestants on Britain's Got Talent, the TV show that he judges. His comments were picked up by microphones with a transcript passed to the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian reported that in a conversation with colleagues not intended for air, Williams referred to one older performer as a C word, and it's the bad C word. He used that 3 times after the contestant made a jibe at him. And after a female contestant walked off stage, Williams is alleged to have commented, "She's like the slightly boring girl you meet in the pub that thinks you want to F them, but you don't want to F them." Wow. And another celebrity has come under fire in recent weeks. A series of controversial voice notes allegedly sent by reality TV star Fern McCann have been shared on an anonymous Instagram account in recent weeks. The latest one appears to show her calling Sophie Hall a silly bitch. Sophie was a victim of an acid attack carried out by Fern's ex-boyfriend Arthur Collins in 2017, and she's been left permanently scarred. Some have claimed that the messages have been edited from separate recordings, and a spokesperson for Fern released a statement today saying she offers her deepest sympathies and that the messages are part of a harassment campaign against her. But notwithstanding the details, and indeed these very offensive alleged remarks, is it wrong to cancel celebrities for private conversations? Mike Parry.
Well, there's two. The David Williams thing. First of all, I don't know why people still think David Williams is entertaining. I just don't find him funny at all. I thought he was great in Little Britain with, what's his name?
Matt Lucas.
Matt Lucas, thank you very much. I thought they a great combo and it was very funny, very original, and he played a great part. But since then, I haven't heard him say anything that's funny. Now, on these two quotes which have been leaked out or have emerged in the Guardian newspaper, the first one, when he's talking to somebody and passing an opinion on a third party, is actually the sort of conversation a lot of us have many times a day. Passing comment on something that's happened. So I don't really criticise him for that because, you know, it's kind of in the workplace and something's happened, he's a bit of a C and all that kind of stuff. The second one, however, gives an indication of David Williams' mind, and being offensive to a woman like that, any woman like that, to me, is much more damaging than the first one, because he's illustrating there misogyny, in my view. He's illustrating there that he's talking down and belittling a woman. And that, to me, is his big problem, and he should not be forgiven for that.
Is that what judges would call the egregious detail, his remarks about that woman?
I think that's worse, but I think his remarks about the man come from the same mindset. I mean, this isn't just a misogynist thing. It's not just about disliking women. I think what he said about the man was just putting someone down that said something mildly funny about him.
But he did it in private, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, hang on a minute. I do quite a lot of media training, and what I say to people is if the mic's live, in any way at all, in that room, in a studio, keep your mouth shut. Now, the point about that situation is there are lots of little mics dotted around because the whole point is to capture the informal conversation of the judges behind the scenes. They don't necessarily need to use it, but we know perfectly well that's not a normal private conversation, point one. Point two was David Williams should have made a proper apology, not this mealy-mouthed fake apology that we're so used to these days. A proper apology, maybe send some money to the favourite charity of the man and the woman. A proper apology. If we're talking about values, which is what we started with on this programme, we might like to start there.
Well said. It was a defensive non-apology, wasn't it, Lembert?
Yeah, I don't think the apology can be taken that seriously. But, and I have to say I'm no great fan of David Williams. When we meet, we don't get on brilliantly. He's not on my Christmas card list. And
I mean, let me quickly say that he's obviously a very, very popular children's author, and he's been an entertainer for a long time. So it's important to acknowledge the achievements he's had.
Well, Linda was saying earlier on when we were talking informally that he is a great writer. It seems to be very good. So he's got those talents. I'm not a fan of his. I don't like his personal manner very much. This is typical of what I would expect from him in terms of how he thinks. But here's the point. We can't have a conversation about free speech and then say the fact he said these offensive things are enough reason to cancel him. Even though I don't have much time for him personally, I now think we got to this woke culture where essentially we're one step off saying you're not allowed to think these things anymore. And that's where I think we're headed.
Yeah, but he didn't just think them, he said them.
I'll be very brief, but we can talk about free speech, but actually he's been very insulting to a man, and that's an egregious swear word he used to the man.
And a member of the public.
And a member of the public. And he was very insulting and misogynistic to the woman. Now, I agree that he's a very creative man, he's written his wonderful children, but all the rest of it. But what I'm saying is, if someone says things that are that bad, Of course, there's the element of free speech. There's also the element of libel.
But Jenny Eclair said this about
the
me.
law of the land.
Jenny Eclair said that about me, the same word, to camera, behind my back, in the jungle. Now, she hasn't been slammed for it. People maybe thought it was funny. I don't think it was very funny.
Well, she didn't prosecute you. She didn't bring a prosecution. But at the end of the day, you can have freedom of speech, but there are laws in this country that are supposed
I agree.
to prevent
But in no way was he saying what he said, using the C word, as part of the programme. He was just saying to somebody, that guy got on my nerves, he's a bit of a C.
But the microphones on that programme,
I agree. I agree, Linda, I agree, but I think we all, recognise, you didn't realise the microphones were there.
I don't want to live under a vanilla sky. I want people to be allowed to be offensive, Jenny Eclair included against me.
I think I'm with Lembit on that. You either have free speech or you don't, but of course you do take the consequences. I'm pleased to say I'd never get caught saying anything outrageous on mic or off mic. Next up in my take at 10, the biological male that's... we've just been cut off, have we? Oh, we're off air now. OK, by the way, Mike Parry, what a pain in the arse he is. And Lembit, the biggest piece of...
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News. Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart. And I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. My Mark Meets guest is the original WAG, model and TV personality and former Miss England, Danielle Lloyd. In the news agenda with my brilliant panel, with record repossessions, should people get help with their mortgage repayments? And as a school charge a pupil 20p for breaking a pencil in the classroom, should teachers and head teachers get tougher with unruly pupils? Plus tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30. And after this, my take at 10. A biological man that identifies as a woman wins a female beauty contest. Welcome to Bonkers 2022. More on that in just a moment, but first the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Mark. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Ukrainian troops have been greeted by residents celebrating in the key city of Kherson after Putin's soldiers were ordered to retreat. It was a city that was right on the front line since the invasion began back in February. Crowds cheered and chanted glory to the Ukrainian armed forces as President Zelensky called it an historic day. It comes after a main bridge over the Dnipro River on the west of the city was destroyed before Russian forces moved out. UK authorities and coastguards are preparing for a significant surge in small boats crossing the English Channel this weekend. Bad weather has stopped migrants from illegally reaching the coast for 11 days. But GB News understands, with the weather expected to improve, crime groups from Albania are planning a mass launch of small boats from French beaches tomorrow. It would be the first large-scale arrival since the end of last month, when just over 14,000 people arrived in 32 small boats. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is warning there's a tough road ahead after new data shows the UK economy shrank between July and September. It contracted by 0.2% during the 3 months as the cost of living crisis deepened. Hunt says difficult decisions will be needed to restore confidence and economic stability, but that the British economy remains resilient. Last week, the Bank of England forecast a 2-year recession, which would be the longest on record. US President Joe Biden says the war in Ukraine has made it more urgent than ever to double down on climate commitments. Speaking at the COP27 climate summit in Egypt, Biden says he's treating the climate crisis with urgency, adding the US will meet emission reduction targets by 2030. He's called on all countries to act faster on climate change.
Climate crisis is about human security, economic security, environmental security, national security, and the very life of the planet. The United States of America will meet our emissions targets by 2030.
The UK marked Armistice Day with a 2-minute silence this morning. Bells rang out across the country, including the recently restored Big Ben in London, ahead the 2-minute silence to remember the war dead. A service was held at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire to pay tribute to all those who've served their country. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan Tonight.
My thanks to Tatiana, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. In my take at 10, a biological man that identifies as a woman wins a female beauty contest. Welcome to Bonkers 2022. More on that in just a moment. In the news agenda with my excellent panel, with record repossessions, should people get help with their mortgage repayments? And has a school got the right to charge a pupil 20p for breaking a pencil in the classroom? Plus tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. And with me throughout the show are top broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee, former Lib Dem MP, filmmaker and TV personality, and let's be honest, national treasure, Lembit Opik, and speaking of which, Fleet Street and radio legend Mike Porky Parry. And my Mark Meets guest is the original WAG, model and TV personality and former Miss Great Britain, Danielle Lloyd. But first, it's time for my Take at 10. A teenager in New Hampshire has become the first transgender contestant to win a local Miss America beauty pageant. Brianne Nguyen, who is 19, won last Sunday's pageant to become Miss Greater Derry 2023, which awards the winner a crown, a title and a generous scholarship. Yes, folks, we've reached peak woke, where an intact biological man rocking the full meat and two veg calls himself a woman and beats a group of actual young girls in a female beauty contest. And I don't want to be unkind, but beauty is stretching the truth too, nearly as stretched as that dress. You'll need a mighty pair of beer goggles for that one, lads. Welcome to Fact Free 2022, where reality doesn't matter anymore and how you feel trumps basic science. This is progress, is it? Of course, we've been here before. Swimmer Leah Thomas smashing other female athletes in the pool, breaking records, even though when she was a man, she barely got her swimming badges. There's the New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard, another biological male who was named Sportswoman of the Year by the University of Otago. Or how about trans actress MJ Rodriguez, who was recently named one of Time magazine's Women of the Year. What's next? Does George Clooney pip Meryl Streep for the Best Actress Oscar? As far as I'm concerned, this is just history repeating itself. Men have a centuries-long track record of bullying and dominating women. And with this bonkers trans ideology, it's happening all over again. Women are threatened by not having their own changing rooms, their own sports, their own prisons and their own rape crisis centres. At its heart, extreme trans ideology, which questions the existence of biological sex, is patriarchy all over again. It's sexism in lipstick and misogyny in heels. Why should young girls participate in these pageants, which involves a huge amount of time, preparation and commitment, if the crown is going to go to a bloke who's decided he's a woman? And in terms of female sport, why should young women forego a social life and their studies to practice for hours in the pool if they're going to be battered by someone who grew up as a biological male with all of the physiological and hormonal advantages that clearly brings? Trans ideology is not just sexist, but it's homophobic too, with lesbians being told they are a bigot if they're not attracted to a trans woman. Take the cock, sister, or we will take you down. In the end, this crazy ideology, which goes against science, which goes against common sense, and which goes against common decency, has overplayed its hand. Almost no one's got a problem with an individual identifying as they please. It's a free country. You can identify however you like. And in doing so, you have my love, support and respect. But let's not rewrite the basic facts of human biology. Let's not call pregnant women pregnant people. Let's not call breastfeeding mothers chest feeders. And let's not have NHS leaflets that we pay for referring to people with a cervix. People with a cervix! If you called my mother a person with a cervix, she would deck you. This trans madness is just another wing of crazy, hard-left, woke ideology, which is a direct threat to Western values. The victorious Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has taken his state from being a marginal to solid Republican by waging a war on this nonsense. Here's what he had to say after his landslide win this week.
We have embraced freedom. We have maintained law and order. We have protected the rights of parents. We have respected our taxpayers, and we reject woke ideology. We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
He will be a great president one day, sooner rather than later, I hope. I can't imagine the turmoil that those young women have gone through at that beauty pageant as they watched their prize taken away from them. This pageant, which is supposed to be a beauty contest, demonstrates this truly ugly ideology. You can ignore it all you like, but it doesn't go away. You can try to be nice and accept the pronouns of he, him and she, her, in the hope they'll leave you alone and move on. But all you're really doing is feeding the monster. If left unchecked, this does not end well. Our society will be unrecognisable and the damage irreversible. Female emancipation is being reversed at a rate of knots, and it's a man's world all over again. What's your view? Do you disagree? Mark at GBnews.uk. Many around the world have celebrated this young woman's success at the beauty pageant. Mark at GBnews.uk is the email reacting to that and all of the big stories of the day. My brilliant panel of Fleet Street and radio legend Mike Porky Parry, broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee, and former Lib Dem MP, filmmaker and TV personality Lembit Opik. Linda, can I come to you first of all? Your reaction to the news that this biological man that identifies as female wins a beauty pageant in America for girls?
Well, I'm kind of struggling with the idea of how she won. That's what I don't understand. Apart from anything else, there's a row of, you know, conventionally attractive women in what is, after all, a conventional beauty pageant, and this person won. I don't understand that at all. Who were the judges? Well, who were the judges?
Yeah, I think it's the same panel of judges they've had for many years, but now this organisation, the Miss America organisation, believes it's moving with the times and accepting trans women as candidates, Linda. I mean, what does this say for the future of women as a species?
Well, I would prefer it if we actually concentrated on all the enormously brave women in Iran who are currently ripping off their hijabs in order to gain some kind of freedom in their own country. So I prefer not to be sidetracked by this debate for too long. But I don't really understand. There must have been some process as to how they ended up with finalists in, as I say, what is a conventional contest. A pageant is a very anodyne, conventional thing, and I'm struggling to understand.
Well, I hate to sound like Suella Braverman, Linda, but I would say that it's an invasion, OK? Because we've got biological men going into women's changing rooms, into women's prisons, into female-only spaces, and now women's sport and beauty pageants. This is the way of the world in 2022, Linda. How do you feel about it as a very accomplished and illustrious woman in your own right?
Well, I don't think that much about it. I don't worry whether I go into a gender-neutral toilet or whether I go into a toilet that's traditionally labelled. I'm not bothered.
OK.
But I do think that we are concentrating on some things which do need to be discussed, but they are very, very complicated. I'd like to lift the lid a little bit more and find out, was this the only transgender woman who was entered into this contest? Because there will have been dozens of other contestants in order to whittle down to those finalists. I want to know, what was the procedure that got everyone to this point where this woman, transgender, trans woman, actually won? I want to know, was it a serious contest or was it in some kind of setup? I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's a long-established competition. It's part of the official Miss America organisation. It's a local heat, if you like. Lembit Opik and Mike Porky Parry, briefly, if you can, because I want to get to my star guest, Danielle Lloyd. But I believe, Lembit, you've got some experience in judging beauty pageants.
Oh, I was actually involved in judging the UK Transsexual Awards a long time ago. And what I learned there was the people who were entering didn't have any political interest at all. They really just wanted to identify as women. So there was no discussion about whether it was right or wrong. But it was the it was the Transsexual Awards. It wasn't a conventional heterosexual beauty contest. And I suppose the one question I'd ask here is, what are we trying to do here? Maybe 200,000 people want to transition. That's the best estimate I could see in my research before the show today. That's maybe 0.28% of the population. My concern is the sport one. We're meant to be fighting competitions on a level playing field. And to have men or former men in that competition simply skews the whole thing. It's like having 30-year-olds or 20-year-olds against 6-year-olds, for example. Biologically, it's just not a fair match. And I actually think that something's gone wrong. I suspect it's because a lot of people have got nothing more to worry about than this. For individuals who are affected, it's really important. But I do think that the woke culture, as you heard from a very impressive Republican there, is just taking hold in a way which is debilitating to society and confusing to lots of kids who are now having to make decisions which they shouldn't really have to be thinking about.
Porky, very briefly, if you can, I'm going to get to your friend Danielle Lloyd in just a moment. But these young women have had a crown and a scholarship taken off them by a biological male who calls himself a woman.
It's unbelievable. I don't know if you've got the original picture of the moment of victory, but all the girls are smiling. They've just oh well, that's life. Supposing I entered Mr. Universe, OK?
You'd win.
Which of course I could, and suddenly the crown was snatched off me by a young 14-year-old lady who suddenly stepped forward and said, no, I've got more muscles than you, can't you see? Are you all blind? And they think, oh, I'll tell you, I'll give her the trophy. Tomorrow morning at 6:30, the Great Britain Women's Rugby League team, right, is playing for the world title. Now, that's where the opposite sex can get in on the game. Do you see what I mean? Rugby league was a man's game for decades, if not 100 years. Now the girls have said they want to play it, so they formed a girls' team to get in on that. That's the way we should go if we want to let people interact with each other's ways of life.
Level play.
Mike Parry for Mr. Universe. Or perhaps more realistically, Mr. Apocalypse. My panel are back at 10:30 for the papers, live and uninterrupted. That's right, 10:30, set your watches. But it's time now for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport, business and beyond. Tonight, the model and TV personality Danielle Lloyd, a former Miss England and Miss Great Britain, who starred in Celebrity Big Brother, The Weakest Link, Come Dine With Me, Total Wipeout and many other TV hits. But she's been as well known for her private life, following her marriage to Premier League football star Jamie O'Hara. It's been a life in the spotlight for this popular star and celebrity Liverpudlian. I'm delighted to say that Danielle Lloyd joins me now. Hi, Danielle.
Hi.
Great to have you on the programme. Listen, you might have caught the tail end of that debate there. This young woman who was previously a man, identifies as female, wins a female beauty pageant. What's your view on that? How would you feel if you were one of those girls that didn't win?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, really, because obviously you wouldn't be very happy, obviously, to lose to a male, seen as it's a female competition. But obviously, I think with these competitions, a lot of the competition organisers like to do things for publicity. They want to get their sort of... they want to get the name out there of the competition. The more publicity, the more sponsorships they get. So they know that this was going to cause controversy and everybody was going to talk about it, which is what's happening now.
Too right. Winning Miss England was clearly the moment that changed your life, Danielle. How did it happen?
I don't really know. I sort of just fell into it, really. My mum got me involved in doing competitions. I was in a pretty violent relationship in the past, and it just really knocked my confidence. And with going into the competitions, I started off not being very confident, not believing in myself. And then obviously as the competitions went on and I did more and more, I grew with confidence and eventually I won.
We're going to be debating pageants on tomorrow night's show. Do you think that beauty pageants are a bit outdated in 2022?
A little bit. They do try and obviously change things up. I think a lot of the competitions don't do the whole bikini round anymore. But girls enjoy it. Like, I get so many women messaging me saying, you inspired me to do it. It gave me confidence and it helped me sort of forget about what I'd gone through, and it made me a better person. I went on when I won Miss England, I actually got on the stage and I spoke about domestic violence, which was a massive platform for me to talk about what had happened to myself. And it was a great opportunity to let other girls know that that's not okay and what to look out for.
Have the scars, the mental scars from that awful domestic abuse that you suffered, have they healed, Danielle?
They have, yes. I'm thankfully I've gone through a lot of therapy, and but I'm grown. I've got 5 kids now. I'm happily married, so yeah, I'm in a good place.
You went on to win Miss Great Britain. Look, what gave you the edge over the other girls? You're very, very beautiful. We know that, and you're very charismatic. But how did you do the double in that way?
I don't really know. I think, obviously, like I've said, I've gone through so many competitions and I just always take every day as it comes. I've grown with confidence and, I always think what will be, will be. I never go into a competition expecting to win. And I just think, you can only do your best, and that's what I did.
You went on to be stripped of the title when you posed for Playboy, but then they reinstated it a few years later. Can you tell me a bit more about that? What happened?
Yeah, obviously, when I shot for Playboy, I mentioned to them that obviously I'd been offered to do Playboy, and they said it was fine. Then afterwards, they stripped me of the title. And again, I think it's all down to let's get some publicity for, it was front page of every single newspaper that I've been stripped of this title. So the competition got the exposure what they wanted. But again, it works both ways. I was on the front page of every single newspaper talking about the fact that I'd done Playboy. So I'm sure I sold some copies.
Yeah, did it not hurt at the time? Were you not wounded by being stripped of the title, or did you just think, oh, well, that's showbiz?
Yeah, it's just showbiz. And at the end of the day, obviously it was hurtful. Like, I'd worked so hard to get where I was. But I was super proud of doing Playboy. It was a great opportunity. Yeah, you didn't meet the Hef, did you? I didn't. He actually wasn't there. I did meet his sister, though, so that was it was really, really good, and it was a great experience. The photo shoot was amazing. I went over to LA and we shot in Palm Springs, so it was fantastic. You've appeared as a model in Playboy and also other best-selling magazines, Maxim, Loaded, Nuts, FHM and Zoo Weekly. Have you ever felt exploited, Danielle? I suppose a lot of people will say that obviously I did exploit myself because I was in all those magazines, but it's so strange. Like, when I speak about it now to my husband, I can only describe it as like, I felt like an actress. So like, I would go to my job, do my photo shoot. I'd be able to like switch on and off, like into character almost. So I enjoyed doing it. It made me feel good. I felt sexy, and why not? I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. I'm a bit old for that. I know the feeling. We've all got our cross to bear. The years are very unkind, aren't they? Danielle, you married Jamie in 2012. You had 3 lovely sons who I know you adore. Things didn't work out with you and Jamie. Was it harder to conduct that relationship in the public eye, both of you being so well known? I think every relationship in the public eye is so difficult because you're always under, watchful eyes, under the scrutiny. But yeah, it's just nice now that we're able to be civil with each other and get on, and for the sake of the children. Yeah, too right. Well, look, congratulations. I know they're 3 smashing kids. And congratulations on your marriage to Michael. And you've got, I think, a little boy and a little girl. Michael
is an electrician. Was that a deliberate attempt to choose a regular guy rather than a famous man second time round?
Yeah, definitely. I needed somebody normal to like ground me, and I've definitely become a lot more normal. Like I feel like now I like to stay at home. I'm a lot more family orientated. I just want to be a mum and the best mum I can be to my children.
Yeah, and I understand we were talking about this with the team earlier, that you really wanted a daughter, you love your boys, but you craved a daughter, and I think you were quite creative in how to make that happen.
Yeah, I was. I was going to go down the gender selection route, but obviously that's illegal in the UK. But luckily, I read a book called, I can't even remember the name now, but I read a book which basically taught me how to have a girl, and it worked. So I'm very, very lucky, and she's 1 tomorrow, so it's her first birthday, so I've been super busy today organising that for her.
Oh my God, thank you for making time to talk to us on that busy day. I hope she's had a lovely, lovely birthday. Congratulations on her arrival. Couple of other quick things before we let you go. Has plastic surgery been good or bad for you?
Well, obviously it's helped my career massively because, you know, I was on the front page of Zoo and Nuts and all the rest of them with my boobies. So it's obviously helped me with that. But, you know, I wished I would have waited because I've got a lot of scars. And I think when you've had kids, everything seems to go south. So I wish I was getting it done now and not back then.
Listen, you look fabulous, and you've clearly, you know, reached a stage in your life where you're enjoying your career, you're enjoying your family. It seems like a really good balance. What's next for you, Danielle? What would you like to do?
I'm thinking, obviously, I've took a step back from being in the public eye, mainly because I want to sort of look after my children and be there for them as much as possible, but just dipping my toes back in the TV world. So you might see you on the screens sometime next year.
There you go. Possibly a bit of reality TV. We can't name names, but you might be on the box next year in something pretty big, right?
Yes. I think I'm allowed to say that.
When you do that, then come into the studio and tell us all about it. It's been a thrill to have you on the programme. You're massively popular. You've had quite a career, and long may it continue. Thanks, Danielle.
Oh, thank you.
There you go, Danielle Lloyd. What a delightful conversation there. It's so difficult, isn't it? These famous people who are trying to be married, trying to have kids, trying to have a career. A lot of pressure, but I think you'll agree that she's handled it with grace. Fantastic. Lots more to come. By the way, we get some amazing names on Mark Meets. We just had Danielle Lloyd. Do you know who we've got on Sunday? On Sunday's show at 10 o'clock, former business secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg. Live on the programme, Jacob Rees-Mogg, this Sunday at 10. You won't want to miss it. Lots more to come. Next up, we've got the papers with full panel reaction.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. Now, this show just got bigger. Every Saturday night, we start at 8, not 9 o'clock, an hour early for the People's Hour, in which I'll be taking your video calls. So if you want to appear on the show, drop me an email, mark@gbnews.uk. So many emails so far. People are queuing up, so we'll take your details, mark@gbnews.uk. And we'd love you to take part in the People's Hour on a future occasion. But it's just gone 10:30, so at this time every Friday, Saturday and Sunday we do tomorrow's papers. And let us start with this one, which is The Guardian. We'll kick off with The Guardian, and they are leading with the following. Staff offered route out amid concerns over Dominic Raab's behaviour. Senior civil servants at the Ministry of Justice were offered respite or a route out of the department when Dominic Raab was reappointed last month amid concerns that some were still traumatised by his behaviour during a previous stint there. Several sources told The Guardian that about 15 staff from the Justice Secretary's private office were taken into a room where departmental chiefs acknowledged they may be anxious about his behaviour and gave them the option of moving roles. Now, we'll discuss that with my panel very shortly. The Daily Mail. Woke stunt row over Met Terror chief's hot flush vest. Britain's anti-terror chief was accused of going woke last night after wearing a menopause jacket at work. Matt Dukes donned the garment, which has heat pads to simulate hot flushes, in a meeting to mark Menopause Awareness Month. He said it was uncomfortable and distracting, but it gave him a heightened awareness of the experiences of menopausal women. Senior retired officers condemned the decision by Scotland Yard's new he for she gender equality lead. The world's gone mad.
This man's a policeman.
Well, you've got to worry for our safety. Angela Rayner, I spent £5,500 on a boob job. That takes us back to Danielle Lloyd. The Times now, care homes told to stop shutting out loved ones. Care homes and hospitals will be forced to allow visitors under plans being drawn up by the government. Helen Whately, the care minister, said shutting out relatives showed a lack of humanity. COVID-19 rules mean some of the country's most vulnerable people still cannot have a loved one at their bedside. The Daily Telegraph next. Met warns strikes will hurt the war on crime. Public sector strikes will distract the police from fighting crime, Britain's most senior police officer, Sir Mark Dolan, has said today. Britain and France reach a deal on migrants, say the Telegraph. Britain is to agree a Channel migrant deal with France. As early as Monday, my panel have their suspicions. We're hearing that the French are putting more police on beaches, pledging to stop more small boats leaving and establishing a joint control centre. The agreement, which involves the UK paying France, here we go, £60 million, will see a significant increase in the 200 gendarme and volunteer officers deployed on Channel beaches. Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, has previously suggested she wanted it doubled. We'll discuss that with my panel very shortly. The Daily Express, UK presence in France to stop crossings. An ambitious deal to put UK officials in France to stop migrant crossings could be ready within a week. So the Telegraph covering that story as well. The Independent. Leslie Manville, the actress, does anyone really think The Crown is a documentary? And liberated Curzon greets soldiers with jubilation. Great news there. Positive developments in the war in Ukraine. The Sun now. Hancock camel scoff hump. Campaigners last night blasted Matt Hancock for scoffing a camel's todger on I'm a Celebrity, whilst his campmates slaughtered him over his COVID grope. The Daily Mirror now. Rumble in the jungle. Sorry's not enough. Charlene White rejected campmate Matt Hancock's apology for breaking his own COVID guidance. In a jungle grilling, the newsreader told him falling in love was no excuse when her aunt died from COVID alone due to lockdown. The PM said, I'm looking for forgiveness. The I newspaper, Sunak delays growth plan as UK heads for recession. The Prime Minister shelved a flagship policy to boost Britain's economic growth. Rishi Sunak planned to cut taxes on business investments in capital projects, with an announcement expected in next Thursday's autumn statement, but reforms have been postponed. The delay will cause concerns in the business community and among senior Tories who fear the Treasury may not do enough to help Britain rebound from a long recession. And last but not least, the Daily Star. I wouldn't touch Wally if I won him in a raffle. Judge gets both barrels from comic he insulted. David Walliams is in deep doo-doo after Britain's Got Talent comic that he insulted got her own back in style. And those are your front pages. Let's get reaction now from Linda Jubilee, Lembit Opik and Mike Porky Parry. And Lembit, let me start with you. Let's talk about concerns at the Ministry of Justice among some rather triggered civil servants who don't want to work for Dominic Raab again.
Yeah, well, what worries me is when I was an MP, I didn't tend to see cabinet ministers and ministers acting in what sounds like quite a disturbing way. Maybe it was going on and people just accepted it. But I get the sense it's not just Dominic Raab. Others, Patel has been often criticised for this. I get the sense that if this is true, these individuals just don't show any kind of decorum, the sort of thing you'd expect in a large multinational. I used to work on Procter & Gamble. If these sort of things happen, you don't just ask people to move, you deal with the problem person. But maybe it's different if you're a cabinet minister. You can do what you like and you can move these people on. Just one big warning here. I don't know how much I can bring myself to believe this. It could be true. And I simply add, if this is really happening, for goodness sake, let's actually apply some commercial values here, because you deal with the bad manager. You don't just move away the offended staff.
What do you think about this? I mean, is there a problem within the cabinet of bullying ministers?
No, this is all complete nonsense. This is a non-story, right? Now, Linda and myself, yourself, we've worked in big media organisations. So I work at Daily Express, I'm doing very well. A new editor comes in and he doesn't fancy me and I don't fancy him. So thank you, off across the street to the Daily Mail. It happens in every organisation. You know, people change jobs all the time, and when a job gets changed, not everybody's going to be happy. This is a load of nonsense. You know, the civil service is one of the biggest employers in this country. So what are they trying to say? Oh, we've got to keep them all happy every time a minister moves or a top civil servant moves. It's utter nonsense. Get on with the job. Stop complaining about, I don't like the person who's sitting on the desk next to me.
Yeah, I think you've got to look at each case individually, though. If you look at Priti Patel and the allegations of bullying there, I think they're pretty well sourced and they're pretty well copper bottoms, as we used to say in Flint.
And the problem is those allegations have followed her from department to department.
And also with Gavin Williamson, we now know that some of that disgraceful language, toxic language, extreme language was all, you know, said and verified. Now, what we're hearing here is some civil servants feel a little bit traumatised about him coming back. It's ridiculous.
And it's another Tory government minister, you know, being dug out by a left-wing newspaper again. It looks like a campaign to me.
Unless he's a bully. Is he a bully?
He's not a bully, though.
Okay,
I can't believe that.
But here's the point. We just can't know whether this stands up or not. As you've both said, it's kind of hearsay. But there is a general concern I have. This shouldn't even be on the front page. This isn't a newspaper story.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a story.
Is there a Machiavellian culture within the cabinet, or was it ever thus, Lembit?
You see, I don't think that there necessarily is. I imagine that Churchill was quite a difficult boss to work for.
But especially before he'd had a drink.
Yeah, my fundamental...
Exactly like Mike Porky Parry, actually.
Well, absolutely.
That was very early in the day, though, wasn't it?
That's right.
My fundamental issue is that we're judging... This is judgment by the media again. I just simply say this would not be acceptable if it's happening in a commercial environment. But you know what? You don't solve these problems on the front page of the magazine.
You raised an interesting point there, because if in a commercial environment the boss was successful and delivering the numbers, then they would tolerate the bad.
No, they still wouldn't. They still wouldn't tolerate it. No? No. What they'd say is you've got to show. Well, at least in my experience, and it's a great company, the one I mentioned.
But Elon Musk has these sort of problems, doesn't he?
Yeah, but that's true. But that's true. But that doesn't make it right. And
I'm saying it makes it right. What I'm saying is, it's part of everyday life. You can't have a perfect working environment, can you?
All I say, my two issues.
But what was the difficulty the last time they were in this department? Is it that Dominic Raab remained on his sunbed when Kabul was falling? And
it says we're taken into a room where department chiefs acknowledged they may be anxious about his behaviour and gave them the option.
Well,
it doesn't say.
Perhaps he had high standards.
No, it will be that he remained on holiday when he should have been back at base dealing with the situation.
That wouldn't tie in with the narrative that they're anxious at his return.
Because they're all back at base trying to deal with it.
It could be on the next page, which we haven't got here. It's all explained. But I would simply say to these journalists, put up or shut up.
If we can avoid it.
If they haven't got the evidence, well, now you're revealing. Now you're bullying the Guardian there, Matt.
No, 3 paragraphs is enough, Lembit.
Well, listen, so much more to get through with my brilliant panel, including pressure now on care homes to change their rules so that loved ones can visit family members and friends without COVID restrictions. And also, we'll talk about the woke terror chief who's been wearing a menopause vest all afternoon. You couldn't make it up. Lots more to get through. More from the papers after this. See you in 2.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship,
and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Lots more to get through from the papers in the company of my excellent panel. We've got Fleet Street and radio legend Mike Porky Parry, top broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee, and former Lib Dem MP, filmmaker and TV personality Lembit Opik. Now, mortgages are the backbone of a successful society. Owning your own home should be an aspiration for everyone, but home repossessions are up 90% compared to last year. So are we looking at a crisis for Britain? This at the same time that the Lib Dems are suggesting that the most vulnerable homeowners should receive a grant of £300 a month to help pay their mortgages. Mike, you own a bit of property.
Yeah.
Do you think that people that have mortgages should get help from the government to pay?
Well, I find this figure very difficult to believe because mortgage rates have only gone up appreciably in about the last 6 months. And you don't, the minute a mortgage rate goes up, you don't suddenly say, I'm going to sell the house. You have to take the pain for 3 or 4 months and then see, can I afford it? And so this figure, 90% up on this time last year, I'd like to see the details on that.
Well, interest rates were rock bottom 6 months ago.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So it's gone up 90% in a couple of months when people have suddenly said...
It's obviously, it must be the pandemic rather than the interest rates.
Well, whatever. But as to helping out people with larger mortgage payments, no way in the world. Mortgages are like buying shares. Shares go up and shares go down, and you invest and you make your own judgment. I remember one time, when we were all in Fleet Street, all young people, all buying property, sometimes 75 or 80% of my take-home pay went on my mortgage when the mortgage rates were 14%, OK?
Right. 14%.
And yet you just have to say, well, it doesn't matter. It's an investment for the future. I'll have to cut down on the booze after work, Mind you, we did have expense accounts in those days, which did help out enormously.
The golden era of Fleet Street.
Yeah, the golden era of Fleet Street. But no, the point I'm making is you make the investment. It's your choice. It's going to be of great value to you later in life. Why should the government subsidise you just because the mortgage rate has gone up. Everybody's got to suffer the pain when we get into the hard work that's got to be done to restore finances, and that includes, I'm afraid, homeowners.
Mike's got very good points, and I totally agree with some of the things you're saying. But I was listening to Martin Lewis and what he was saying, and I think that this winter is not what's concerning him. I think it's the following winter where the real pain will be felt.
£85 million, Mr Lewis, yes.
But, I know, but he's worked very hard to get it.
Yeah, I agree. I tell you, he went to my school, King's School, Chester, so good luck to him.
Very good guy. But also, I think that there will come a point when youngsters, will need some support. I mean,
no, don't agree.
Times.
They'll have to sell the house.
Agree. I totally agree.
So you'd say younger first-time buyers maybe get some help?
First-time buyers should get some help, and I think people in difficult circumstances next winter, not this winter, next winter, younger people, for example, they should get.
Well, interest rates should be coming down by then. If all the projections are right.
Got to be hoping. Lemmy, this is your former Lib Dem colleague Ed Davey, who's proposing this grant of £300 to pay people's mortgages.
Well, I'd love to see where he gets the money.
Too soon.
When it comes down to it, I can see how this can really cripple you. Let's say you've got a £200,000 mortgage, which is, I guess, fairly typical. If you've gone from fixed rate of something like 1.7% to a variable of, say, 6%, that's £8,000 a year extra. Now, that completely dwarfs anything extra you're going to be paying in energy prices.
And inflation on top of it.
Oh, well, the inflation in terms of cost of living crisis caused, incidentally, by our balmy environmental policies, but I digress. Added to the...
Digress away.
Well, OK, there is no climate crisis. And if they actually want to cut the cost of living, if they want to cut inflation, let's scrap this insane obsession with thinking that we need to cut CO2. I feel better now.
Yeah.
When it comes to the mortgage situation, it's great for Ed to say £300 a month. I don't dislike the guy. Where's the money going to come from?
Yeah, but long term, you never lose out with property.
No, you don't.
I know that sometimes it goes down. You're in negative equity for a couple of years or something, but it's the best investment in the world. In the long term, you always win.
I think the real concern is about repossessions, though. I do think there's a great fear of repossessions, and I do think that there's a great danger of that happening, not this winter, but next winter.
I think you're right. But then, as you said, the cost of your mortgage can go up as well as down.
Yes.
And the point that you made is right. I think that at the end of the day, this is going to be very difficult for a lot of people. But you can't just pay and subsidise.
No, you can't.
All the time.
I agree.
The government's
We've had 2.5 years of that.
But the government's got a generous scheme already.
Agree.
I think you get about 40 grand, some kind of a very good loan if you're a first-time buyer. So
That's
it's
right.
already there.
Absolutely.
And so I don't think we need to do more. You just have to be careful.
The Help to Buy scheme, has been going now for 3 years and helped a lot of people to get the first foot on the property ladder.
And that's probably all you need. If we're going to start subsidising basically a great investment, then give it to everybody. Well, you're not going to give it to somebody who's got a really big mortgage, but perhaps has just retired. Where do you draw the line? At the end of the day, if we're actually a free market economy, some people will suffer. But I do agree with you, Linda, there will be repossessions, because a lot of people assumed it would be 1.7% forever, and the Institute for Economic Ideas
The thing is, these days as well, there's another trick you can do here. Traditionally, you always took out a 25-year mortgage. When I was young, that was what your parents took out. Now, because you live so much longer, you go and stretch your mortgage to 35 or 45 if you want.
You're allowed to.
Well, you will be allowed to, because they want to lend you the money for longer, because they get more interest on it if they do. And
you've got to be earning the money across that time frame.
Do you know what? Some of them will give you mortgages now into your 70s based on the fact that you're probably going to inherit money from your parents' property. Well, that's the way it works these days.
And, of course, inflation chips away at the debt anyway, doesn't it? And assets tend to grow over the long term, as you mentioned.
The gamble there is have an interest-only mortgage, because 300,000 now will not be anything more than about 60 grand if you wait long enough. I want a 100-year interest-only mortgage. Then I won't be too worried.
You look fit enough to survive that one. A school, Lembit and panel, have sparked outrage after sending a parent a 20p bill for a pencil that their 10-year-old child broke in class. The 32-year-old mother is refusing to pay the cost, saying her son could have been given a timeout or a detention instead of a bill. So there's a 10-year-old kid who's at primary school. He's broken a pencil just like this one. I won't break this because I love pencils and I think it's terrible barbarism. You want me to break it? I can't do it. We're in a cost of living crisis. No!
You can't break it. Good.
I can't, because I don't want to pay 20p. But listen, folks, what do it... No, Christina's not happy. She wants it broken now. Done it. There you go. I'll pay my debt to society. But can I defend my producer, Christina? Because you might think I've just wasted a pencil, but do you know what she argued in our meeting today? Got two, because what I'll do is I'll sharpen both ends, so I've doubled my pencil action.
Good man.
So I don't feel at all bad. But listen, what do we think, Linda? Is this tough love from the school, or are they a bit over the top?
They're being completely ridiculous. To go to all the time and the trouble of writing a letter to the mother for the sake of 20 pence is completely
But Jubes, they're making a point, aren't they?
What point?
It's like that New York policy. They call it the broken window policy. Zero tolerance. This idea that in a neighbourhood, if there's one broken window, people get used to living in a slum and behaviour gets worse.
But it's a school and it's a broken pencil. It
It's
happens
a
all
matter
the
of
time.
principle. No, they don't like this kid, do they? This teacher doesn't like this kid. This kid is, you know, probably come to the teacher's attention quite a lot. I think it does say in the report I read that it was a hyperactive child or maybe autistic and like that.
But a bit of tough love, Mike?
No. I completely agree with Linda.
You've all gone soft.
No,
my viewers will love this.
No, you ring up the mother and you say, listen, you can't broke another pencil. I broke one yesterday.
This is putting a marker in the sand like paying 10 for a plastic bag. That's what this is all about.
Well said.
Yeah,
Lembit wins the day.
Love.
Can I thank you for the most outstanding 2 hours? What a brilliant debate. Linda, Lembit and Mike, please come back soon. What a fantastic panel. Thanks to my team for working so hard today, putting together a truly admirable show. Headliners is next. I'm in the hot seat. We're back tomorrow at 8 o'clock, an hour early for the People's Hour and Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In. But next, we have got headliners. And let me tell you, on Monday, we've got, Sunday, I should say, a very special guest for Mark Meets on Sunday. Take a listen to this.
This Sunday on Mark Dolan Tonight, my Mark Meets guest is one of the most colourful and controversial politicians in the country, former Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg. We'll get his views on the economy, on the nurses' strike, on Brexit and our new PM Rishi Sunak. That's Jacob Rees-Mogg live on Mark Dolan Tonight, this Sunday from 9.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both